The minimum of menstruation, which is the blood that exits the woman's vagina without that being due to a defect, is a day and a night. So what is hayd? What is menstruation? The blood that exits the woman's vagina without that being due to a defect. How many types of vaginal bleeding are there? 3. What are they? Start with the major one first. Menstruation. Postpartum bleeding, which is when? After giving birth, after delivery, and then? Sickness bleeding. Okay. So the minimum of menstruation, which is the blood that exits the woman's vagina without that being due to a defect, is a day and a night. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, إِنَّ هَذَا شَيْءٌ كَتَبَهُ اللَّهُ عَلَى بَنَاتِ آدَمَ أو كما قال, which means this is something that Allah has ordained for the daughters of Adam. That means that menstruation is something that existed in women since the days of Adam alayhi salatu wassalam. Some people claim that menstruation started with the women of the children of Israel, and that's not true. Menstruation started since the first human beings, since the daughters of Adam alayhi salatu wassalam. However, there is something related to the issue, related to the women of the children of Israel, which is that some of the women at that time, when they were Muslims, when the children of Israel were Muslims, some of the women used to go to the masjid and they used to wear clothing, seductive clothing, to tempt the men. And Allah Ta'ala inflicted those women with very strong menstruation. This doesn't mean that those were the first women to menstruate, but this was something that Allah inflicted them with, because that's not easy. So they had very strong menstruation for what they did. Okay? So the minimum of menstruation, which is the blood that exits the woman's vagina without that being due to a defect, is a day and a night. Does that have to be 24 consecutive hours? Does it have to be a whole day without stopping? Hello? The sisters should be mostly knowing this very well so that they can answer that question immediately. The question is, when we say that the minimum of menstruation is a day and a night, does that mean that this menstrual blood needs to have been flowing or running or coming down for 24 consecutive hours without stopping? No, it does not mean that. Go ahead, continue. Loud so everyone can hear.
An amount equaling a day and a night. Its norm is 6 or 7 days.
Its norm is 6 or 7 days. That means the average norm of menstrual cycle among women is 6 days or 7 days. Go ahead.
With their nights.
With their nights. And
maximum is 15 days with their nights.
And its maximum is 15 days with their nights. Then, if the minimum is 24 hours and the maximum is 15 days, and we said that it does not have to be 24 consecutive hours, then what does it have to be? What's the minimum? If it doesn't have to be 24 consecutive hours, then what are we saying? It has to be at least what? If the minimum of menstruation is 24 hours and the maximum is 15 days, and when we said 24 hours, we said it does not have to be 24 consecutive non-stop hours, then what does it have to be? I'll give you 30 seconds to answer my question. Okay, for the third time, when we said 24 hours is the minimum, 15 days is the maximum, but it doesn't have to be 24 non-stop hours, then what does it have to be? It has to be 24 hours inside of 15 days. 24 hours inside of 15 days. So look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 days, which is how long? How long is 15 days? Half of a month. Half of a month. We're talking Islamic months. So, it has to be 24 hours inside of 15 days. So let's say on day 1, okay, on day 1 she saw 5 hours of bleeding. Does she need to take a ghusl? First of all, what does she do from the moment she sees the bleeding on day 1? What does she do? She treats it as menstruation immediately. She doesn't wait to see if it's going to go for 24 hours to treat it like menstruation. As soon as that blood comes, she's going to treat it like menstruation, which means she's going to do what? She's going to stop praying, stop fasting, and whatever else a menstruating woman refrains from. Now let's say on day 1, she saw 5 hours of bleeding, and then it stopped. Does she need to take a ghusl? Why not? Because it wasn't 24 hours yet. Did she go past 15 days? No. Okay. So she still has how many days? She still has how many days does she has a window that she needs to be inside. She can't go outside of that. How many days she have left? 14 days. So let's say on day 2, she saw 5 more hours of bleeding, and then it stopped. How many hours of bleeding does she have so far? 10. Does she need to take a ghusl? No. All she needs to do is make istinja, make wudu, and do whatever, like pray. Pray when the prayer time comes in. Then, let's say on 3rd day, she saw 1 hour bleeding. How many hours does she have so far? 11. Does she need to take a ghusl? No. Then the 4th day, she saw 7 hours of bleeding. How many does she have so far? 18. Does she need to take a ghusl? No. Then let's say on the 5th day, she saw 2 hours of bleeding. How many does she have now? 20 hours of bleeding. Does she need to take a ghusl? Did she go past her 15-day window? No. Now let's say on day 6, she saw 10 hours of bleeding. How many hours is that? 30 hours. Did she reach the minimum? What's the minimum? 24 hours. And then it stopped after that. Does she need to take a ghusl now? Yes. Because she experienced the minimum of menstruation. 24 hours of bleeding inside of 15 days. Okay? So it's important for the woman to keep track of her menstrual cycle so that she can know how to start praying, how to stop praying, when she needs to pray, when she doesn't need to pray, when she can't pray, when she needs to take a ghusl or doesn't need to take a ghusl. And it's very important for you to know this information. Even for the men, it's important for them to understand these cases, but for the women, so that the women can teach the women. Okay? It's important for the sisters to learn these cases so they can take care of themselves and so that they can teach the women too. Maybe after that, you go review that with your mothers, review that with your sisters. Say, Mom, did you know about this? Can I review this case with you? Make sure I understand it well. Read that. Give this lesson to your mothers. See if they'll give you a time. Say, can I have about half hour of your time? Then, take the book, open it up, read it and explain it. And then you'll understand very well. Now, she's still got 15 days, right? She reached her minimum. Does she need to keep counting the hours? No. Now what does she have to count? Days. Great. You're with me. Now she needs to start counting days. How many days? And by the way, once she knew she had 24 hours of bleeding, then she knew that what? That all of this was menstruation. Even the time when she was not bleeding. Even the time when the bleeding stopped, all of it was menstruation. So, now, day 7, the bleeding came back. But she doesn't have to count the hours now. Doesn't matter. The hours, you only have to count the hours until you get the minimum. Once you get to the minimum hours, which is how many?
24.
Then after you get to 24, you need to start counting days. How many days does she have left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So, when is she going to get worried? Yes? Exactly. On which day? Day 16. Now, day 16, she's going to have to worry. Okay? Let's say now on day 7, getting back to day 7, she saw blood and then it stopped. Does she need to take a whistle? Yes. Yeah, because now it's confirmed for her that she's menstruated and she's still inside 15 days. So that bleeding came back and then it stopped. Does she know for sure it's going to come back again? Then she needs to take a whistle. She doesn't know for sure it's going to come back again. She needs to take a whistle. Yes?
How about if somebody knows on the cycle and you say like mine is like 6 days, like for example someone says that there's like 6 days and then it stops and then it comes back on the 7th day. So they know they're normal, so are they going to take a whistle and start praying even though they know it's going to come back?
Okay, we're going to come back to that. We're going to come back to talk about when does a woman give consideration to her own personal norm. The first thing we need to know is what's the religious rule. Okay? You have 3 different things to consider. One and foremost is the religious rule. Two is the difference between strong bleeding and weak bleeding. Strong versus weak bleeding. We'll come back to explain that. 3, the third thing is her own personal norm. So a woman has 3 things to consider. The first thing she's going to consider is the religious rules. Nothing more. Religious rule states that it's at least 24 hours and at maximum 15 days. What's her norm? Who cares? The religious rule said 24 hours minimum, 15 days maximum. Her personal norm right now so far is meaningless. Okay? With me? All right. Now let's say on day 8, the bleeding came back and then it stopped. Does she need to take a ghusl? Yes. Imagine if a person made wudu and then he went and passed gas. Does he need to make a new wudu before he prays? Yeah. So he went and made wudu. Then he did whatever he did, and then after a while he passed gas. Does he need to make wudu? Yeah. So he went and made wudu, and then after that, and he did whatever he had to do, and then he passed gas. Does he need to make wudu? Yes. So also here, this woman on day 7, the bleeding came back, but then it stopped. Does she need to take a ghusl? Yes. But then, because she doesn't know it's going to come back, so she takes a ghusl. But then on day 8, it came back. And then, so when it came back, she knows that what? Really, she was still menstruating. Follow me? Then on day 8, it came back, and then it stopped. Does she need to take a ghusl? Yes. Then on day 9, it came back, and it didn't stop. Day 10, it didn't stop. Day 11, it didn't stop. Then on day 12, it came back. Then on day 12, it stopped. Did she need to take a ghusl? Yes. Then on day 13, it came back. Day 14 came back. Day 15, it came back and then it stopped. Did she need to take a ghusl? Yes. But what if the bleeding continued all the way until day 16? Now she knows for sure she's in sickness bleeding. Because there's 3 types of bleeding. Did she deliver a baby? Let's say she didn't. So now she knows that for sure she's in sickness bleeding. So the question is, what? Huh? When will it stop? I guess you would ask yourself that, but no, that's not the question. It's the opposite. When did it begin? When did this sickness bleeding begin? Not on the 16th day. No. It didn't just turn on. Day 16, and then sickness bleeding came down. No, not like that. No. It depends. Here she looks. The first thing she's going to take a look at is, can she tell the difference between strong blood or weak blood during this time? Means on day 16, now she knows that she is in sickness bleeding. Day 16 didn't start the sickness bleeding. Day 16 is the day that she knows that she's in sickness bleeding. On day 16, she's going to say, actually, I've already started my sickness bleeding. The question is, when? So what she's going to look for, the first thing she's going to look for is did I notice different bleeding through those 15 days? Was some of it strong and some of it was weak? Was some of it, for example, dark like black and some of it was red? Or was some of it, for example, red, but some of it was pink? Or was some of it, for example, pink, but some of it was yellow? Okay, yes, there's 5 colors for menstrual blood. Forgot? Black, red, pink, yellow. What's the 5th one? Brown, like soil. Brown like soil. If a woman saw blood of any of these colors, then it's valid to be menstruation. Doesn't have to be red, could be black, could be pink, could be yellow. Also, it's not a condition for the blood to come to the outside. It's not a condition that the blood reaches the outside. Even if a woman bled very faintly and weakly in such a way that if she inserted something like a cotton, she could pull it out and see a trace of blood, then this is menstruation. Okay? Now, did she tell the difference between, did she have, for example, some blood was black and some blood was red? Then she'll say, the black blood was the menstruation and the red blood was the sickness bleeding. So when a woman is menstruating, she needs to keep track of that. Okay? She'll notice that. Watch herself. Watch her situation. Or was some of it red and some of it was pink? Then the rule is the stronger one is the menstruation. She'll say the red blood was the menstruation and the pink blood was the sickness bleeding. Or was some of it pink and some of it was yellow? Then the pink blood was the menstruation and the yellow blood was the sickness bleeding. That's the way it goes. You understand? It's clear? All right. But what if it all came out the same way? Then what does she look for? Her own personal norm. She says, wait, now it's day 16. And I'm still experiencing bleeding. Let me ask myself a question. Did I notice that my bleeding came out in 2 different ways? Strong bleeding and weak bleeding? No, I didn't notice that. All of my bleeding came out the same way. It all had the same color. It all had the same thickness. and it all had the same scent. It all came out the same way. Then, how am I going to know when my sickness bleeding started? Let me resort back to my normal menstrual cycle. Let's say that woman usually menstruates for 5 days. She'll say, my normal menstrual cycle is 5 days. So since all of my bleeding came out the same way, then I know that my sickness bleeding started on what day? 6. Day 6. So now that I'm in day 16, and I know that I have sickness bleeding, and I'm not menstruating anymore, I'm going to have to do what? Take a whistle and make up her prayers. Make up those prayers. She doesn't have to make them up right away, because she missed them with an excuse. The one who misses the prayer with an excuse is allowed to delay making it up. But it's better for her to make it up right away. Yes? Go ahead. Any question so far? All right. Let's read again. Go ahead, ma'am. So the minimum of menstruation, which is the blood that exits the woman's vagina without that being due to a defect, is a day and a night, i.e. an amount equaling a day and a night. Its norm is 6 or 7 days with their nights, and its maximum is 15 days with their nights. So it has to be 24 hours inside of 15 days. Yes? Everybody with me? It's clear? Go ahead, ma'am. Continue.
But is she not going to go to the doctor or something?
Sorry?
Is she not going to go to the doctor or to the medical?
She doesn't have to go to the doctor. What is sickness bleeding? Sickness bleeding, istihalba, is any bleeding that can't be menstrual blood and it can't be postpartum blood. That's its definition. Take that definition and think about it. It's important. Any bleeding that cannot be, write it down. Sickness bleeding is whatever cannot be menstrual or postpartum bleeding. Sickness bleeding is whatever cannot be menstrual or postpartum bleeding. That's the rule. For example, what's the minimum of menstruation? A day and a night. So if a woman bled, if a woman saw bleeding, vaginal bleeding for 5 hours, and then it stopped and it never came back, can that be menstrual blood? No. Did she deliver a baby? So can it be postpartum blood? Then what must it be? Sickness bleeding. Sickness bleeding is any blood that cannot be menstrual blood and it cannot be postpartum blood. For example, a woman bled for 15 days and then on day 16, she still sees blood. Can that blood on day 16 be menstrual blood? No, because 15 is the maximum. Did she deliver a baby? So then it can't be postpartum blood, so what must it be? Sickness bleeding. For example, does a woman menstruate if she's 7 years old or 5 years old?
No.
No. Did she deliver a baby?
No.
Then what must it be? Sickness bleeding. So sickness bleeding is any blood that cannot be menstrual blood or postpartum blood. Got it? All right. Continue, ma'am. Nice and loud, please.
The minimum purity between two menstrual cycles is 15 days.
The minimum purity between two menstrual cycles is 15 days. Yes?
So if the woman's blood stops 15 days in such a way that it is not considered connected to the blood before the
Cessation.
cessation of bleeding.
That means the ceasing, the stopping of the bleeding.
Then this new blood is not menses. Rather, it is sickness bleeding.
Okay, so now we're talking about the time of purity. What is the minimum purity between two menstrual cycles? 15 days. So, let's say that woman menstruated and now it's done. So there has to be how many days before her next menstruation? 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. How long is 15 days? Half of a month. So if you notice, it means that according to these rules, a woman could menstruate for half of the month and then be pure for half of the month. And then menstruate for half the month and then be pure for half of the month. That's the maximum. The maximum menstruation and the minimum purity. Clear? All right. So, her menses ended. Her purity started here. Day 1 of purity. No more menses. So, she should not expect a new menstruation until when? Day 16. She should not get a new menstruation until then. Which means, if she gets a new blood in here, then what is that bleeding? Sickness bleeding. Her menses ended, and then, before 15 days passed, she saw blood. Let's say on day 12, she saw bleeding. What is that blood? Sickness bleeding. It's clear? Okay. It's clear, sister? Yes?
How about if, for example, a lady, she doesn't menstruate at all.
Then she doesn't have to worry about it.
Yeah,
Like me. I'm not a lady, but I don't menstruate, so I don't have to worry about it.
But then, maybe when they get older, maybe 40 years old, it comes to them. Is that how menstruation is done?
Yeah. Yeah. A woman could menstruate for the rest of her life. She might menstruate once in her life. She might not menstruate till she's 30.
So that's normal.
It's not normal. Usually a woman starts menstruating in her youth. Like when she's, for example, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's when she'll start. Usually.
So it's menses, not sickness.
It's not sickness. If a woman is older than 9 and did not yet reach the age of menopause, like she's not 60 or 70 or 80 years old, and then bleeding starts, then what is this bleeding? Menstruation. Even if she's old, it still can be menstruation. There's nothing impossible about an 80-year-old woman menstruating. It's not impossible. Go ahead, ma'am. So if the woman's blood stopped and then started again before the passage of 15 days in such a way that it is not considered connected to the blood before the cessation, the stopping of bleeding, then this new blood is not menses, rather it is sickness bleeding. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There is no maximum duration of purity between two cycles. There is no maximum duration of purity between two cycles because a woman might menstruate once every 2 or 3 months or once every year, and she might really menstruate once or twice.
That's right. There's no maximum duration of purity between two cycles, meaning there is no maximum duration there's no maximum duration of purity between two menstrual cycles because a woman might menstruate once every 2 or 3 months. So who's to say that what's the minimum, what's the maximum? If we claim that there's a maximum purity period, that means there has to be a time when her menses will for sure come back again. And does it have to be that her menses will for sure come back again? No. She might menstruate once every 2 or 3 months. She might menstruate once every 2 or 3 years. Or she might menstruate once in her whole life. She might never know when she's going to menstruate. She might menstruate once, and then a month later she menstruates, then 6 months later she menstruates, then 5 years later she menstruates, then 1 month later she menstruates, then 3 years later she menstruates, then 2 months later she menstruates. That's possible. So there's no maximum of purity. There's a minimum, but no maximum. That's clear? Okay. Go ahead, ma'am.
The minimum of postpartum bleeding, which is the blood that exists in the vagina after childbirth, is 1 drop.
The minimum of postpartum bleeding, which is the blood that exits from the woman's vagina after childbirth, is 1 drop. And you know childbirth is not a condition. It could be even a miscarriage. If a woman was pregnant and then she had a miscarriage, that means her baby died and came out. Her womb spit out what was inside of it. So the baby didn't live, didn't survive. And then after that she saw vaginal bleeding. This is postpartum bleeding. And it doesn't have to be a vaginal birth. If she had her belly cut, what do they call that? C-section, cesarean section. Then the baby was pulled out from her belly, and then after that she saw vaginal bleeding. Then what is this? Postpartum bleeding. Okay? It doesn't even have to be a baby she delivered. What if a blood clot came out? And then after that, a clump of hard blood came out. And then after that she saw vaginal bleeding. What is that? Postpartum bleeding. Or what if she delivered a clump of flesh? It wasn't a human. It didn't have the shape of a person. It had the shape of a football, for example. And then after that, she saw vaginal bleeding. What is that? Postpartum bleeding, okay? When we say childbirth, we just mean normally. Okay? Maybe. Okay. So 1 drop of postpartum bleeding is the minimum. 1 moment, 1 spit, whatever blood exists. If it stops after that, she takes a ghusl. Its norm is 40 days and nights, and its maximum is 60 days, and whatever goes beyond 60 days is sickness bleeding. Any question? All right. We're out of time for now, inshallah. Inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala, I'll bring some homework questions for you, hopefully, so you can do some homework over the weekend. Yay! Yeah, come on. All right, no question?